Mixed martial arts! Mixed martial arts! How do we like our martial arts? In a big freaking state-of-the-art sphere! Baby! Woo!
Casey, I'm so excited. I didn't know where you were going to go. I thought there was a chance it might just be a sphere chant. But big state-of-the-art sphere it is, because that's what we got ahead of us this weekend, ladies and gentlemen. If you're listening right now, this is the UFC 306, a.k.a. Riyadh Season Presents Noche UFC. And this is our preview show here at MMAfighting.com. And hi guys, my name's Jed Meshew. You can see the name right there if you're listening. I'm Jed Meshew. Lovely to be here with you. I'm a writer for MMAfighting.com. It's a terrific website. And today, I am joined by another writer from MMAfighting.com, that great website. The esteemed, the wonderful pundit, Mike Heck. Mike, how you doing?
Hi, Jed. Hi, everybody. Pundit Mike in the house. Takes will be mild at best, maybe a little medium. Who knows? It's a Friday. It's Noche UFC Eve. Let's do this thing.
I'm very excited to do this thing. I love doing this because we talked yesterday on BTL. You got a lot of my opinions. You'll get some more of them, but it's always good to have Pundit Mike Heck joining us. And of course, alongside Pundit Mike, we also have the man. You've already heard the man speak. He is the man behind the boards. He is Mr. 3024 himself, the man with no room for sleeves nor mercy. Casey Leiden. Casey, you're muted.
We're off to a great start.
First day on the job. First day. I'm new. I'm new here, guys. There's been a lot of turnover. I'm a new hire. I'm sorry, but I got my Topo Chico and my Los Crudos shirt, so I'm ready for UFC 306 talk. Let's get it.
You know the deal. If it's your first time here, happy to have you. I hope you stick around. Otherwise, you know the deal. We're going to talk about this weekend's events. We got a lot of action to cover. And then at the end, we'll get to some questions from y'all. Priority obviously goes to the super chats, but we're a company of the people. This is not a pay to play enterprise. We're going to get to some non-super chats as well. But Casey, pop back in here, because before we start getting into the meat and bones of this, I did want to talk to you about my opening question here, because Mike and I have already had some conversations. Mike and I are doing the watch party tomorrow, so we will talk ad nauseum about this event, but I haven't really gotten your opinions. And the biggest question I have, the first question I have is, Casey, what are the vibes like? How are you feeling? What is your interest level, and what are your expectations for an event that has been billed and promised to be the greatest live sporting event of all time?
It will be a good sporting event. It'll be the greatest sporting event of the weekend. I'll give it that. I'm kind of like you. I've been disappointed a lot when the UFC, as far as expectations, when they go, oh, this is going to be the greatest thing ever. And it turns out UFC 200, they made a yellow mat, or the biggest thing ever. And, we have a smoke machine when Conor McGregor walks out, biggest thing ever is the UFC Apex in a desert. So look, I'm going to say super positive and assume maybe, this will be the greatest show ever. And, I don't know. It's just, I just want to be positive about it. I'm sure everyone who paid the $10 billion for a ticket to the Sphere, it will be a super awesome experience. At home, I don't know. Maybe it'll be like watching someone play VR. It's like, oh, that looks cool if I was wearing the goggles, but yeah. But the card is great. I actually like the card. No issues with the card itself.
Card is good. And Mike, now we'll go to you, because I also, of course, want your thoughts on sort of what your expectations are basically for tomorrow, because I think there can be a wide range here. People sort of are all over the board with kind of what they believe will be, quality for the at-home experience. And so before we get into the card, because I think the card is an interesting part of this, just the Sphere show. How pumped are you? Kind of where's your head at 24 and a little bit of change hours before we do this thing? Mike, you're also muted. We're doing great, guys.
We're on fire. Multitasking. No, it's they're high. The expectations are high here. And normally when Dana White promises things, I think you and I kind of view it through the same lens. It's just like, yeah, heard this all before. UFC 300, wait till you see this main event. It's going to knock your socks off. And we got Alex Pereira versus Jamal Hill, which is a fine main event, but it didn't knock our socks off. This seems different. This seems like there's no gray area here. This is either going to be the most electric thing the UFC has ever done, or we're going to show up on the post-fight show on Saturday night and be like, this was a disaster. This was an absolute letdown. Ben Roethlisberger promos playing over a pay-per-view will pale in comparison to what this is. And just based on conversations I've had, people I've talked to, I really think this is going to be a really cool experience. And as I've talked about a million times already, the biggest drawback of all of this is that it's going to end. Like once Sean O'Malley and Merab really do the thing and someone's hand gets raised and they go off the air, that's it. Like that might be the last time they do this. And then, we'll be in Paris in 2 weeks and that crowd's going to be awesome and it's going to be a cool event. And then it's going to be UFC 307 and that's going to be cool. And then October 12th, we're back at the world's most famous Apex and we're going to be thinking to ourselves, man, you remember how cool UFC 306 was? They went to the Sphere and did the fun thing and they went all in on something and they went over the top to promote it. We're just not going to see this again for a really long time. So I guess that's like my only thing that's kind of holding me back from this, but I believe Dana. I think they've done everything they can to make this really cool. And selfishly, I am a production nerd. I like the aesthetics and I like to see how everything especially plays off on television. I think it's going to be nuts. I don't think it's going to be obviously to the same level as the people who spent all this money to buy tickets to the event, but I think it's going to be a pretty cool experience. And I'm fascinated by what this is all going to look like tomorrow night.
I have come around. I was not negative on it. I was really just holding my judgment, right? Because to Casey's point, kind of what Casey said earlier, I've been promised a lot by the UFC, and they have historically been really bad about over-promising and under-delivering. But at the same time, I wanted to come into this event with some positivity. I'm not AK. I can't be the prince of positivity. But like I get on many programs and constantly rail on the UFC for not trying or being creative or having fun. And undeniably, they are doing that. And so I wanted to at least give them a fair shot. And as we've gotten closer and we've learned more, I am very optimistic about what the in-person experience would be like, because this is not, hey, our production team is making a gold cage. This is, hey, we got in Glenn Weiss and we outsourced to the people who did Taylor Swift Eras tours. And I'm going to say something that may be tough, probably okay for ours, but don't clip this and put it into the internet. I don't care about Taylor Swift's music. Like if it's your thing, fine, but it does not, I'm not into it. But I obviously know a lot of people who are super into it, and they all to a person say that the live experience is unbelievable. And so you're getting those type of professionals in here to do this show. I have every confidence that the live in-person experience is going to be amazing. And Mike, that takes me to, you would normally ask me what my Meshew score is for a pay-per-view. And this is a very unique one, Mike, because I think there's no other score you could give for this possibly once in a lifetime experience than 3 stars. This experience is worth taking a special trip out to Las Vegas to be a part of, especially because it may never come again. If it does, great. I genuinely hope that happens. But so it's a 3-star card just sort of by default. But now let's get into the nuts and bolts of it. Because if you're looking at the card, right, we haven't even mentioned the fights yet. We're however many 10 minutes in, and we've just been talking about the spectacle, because this card is very spectacle first. But Our main event this weekend, Sean O'Malley defending the bantamweight title against Merab Dvalishvili in a fight that's been building for well over a year. Co-main event, Alexa Grasso, Valentina Shevchenko 3, their trilogy for the women's flyweight belt on the line, and then 8 other support fights for the 2 big centerpieces. Not involving the Sphere, this would be a 1-star fight card. Because of the Sphere, it gets to 3. But Mike, you don't have your own proprietary scoring system like myself or AK. You might need to work on that and come up with something, but I'm going to put you on the spot and say, outside of the Sphere aspect of this card, just, as we move into talking about the fights, what are you grading this card on its merits if, the production for us at home ultimately isn't that different?
It's so hard to grade it without it, though, right? I think part of the allure and the mystique of all of this, because the card, let's be honest, we're here to be honest with the world. This is not the best pay-per-view card they've had. It's not the worst, but it's certainly not the best. I think the top 4 fights are awesome. The main event's one of the best fights left in the calendar year. The co-main event, we get to wrap up a historic trilogy. These 2 women are sort of made for each other from a stylistic perspective. Obviously, Brian Ortega, Diego Lopez is a big fight. It's a really cool fight. The styles just clash perfectly. Daniel Zellhuber versus Esteban Ribovic scratches me right where I itch. Love that fight. It's the best division in the sport, and these are 2 of the young up-and-comers in this division that can really make a splash and really send a message to the upper guys, even the top 15, top 20 of this division with a great performance. And then, the main card opener I see has been getting chastised, but I think business picked up a little bit at the press conference last night with Ronaldo Rodriguez and O'Day Osborne yelling and screaming, and Rodriguez saying a lot of things in his native language that probably cannot be repeated on this program for monetization purposes. But that fight is there for a specific purpose. That fight is there because someone's getting stopped real fast. Either O'Day Osborne is going to clobber this guy and knock him out, or Rodriguez is going to take him to the mat and just do Rodriguez things and strangle this man. So that fight is there for the sole purpose of a quick finish to get this thing off and running. The prelims, there's some ranked fighters and there's some interesting storylines. You got Raul Rosas Jr. This is done for a reason. This has all the intangibles of a spectacle event. We have squash matches. We have a couple of compelling matchups. And then we have a main card, it's all about the main event and the co-main event. So taking the Spirit, if this is a T-Mobile Arena, this is probably a B-, honestly. And it would probably be a little bit lower, but I love the fact that it's 10 fights. I think 10 fights is absolutely fantastic. And the 7:30 start time, absolutely fantastic. Everything about this is cool. I understand why people are not thrilled with the overall quality, but if you look at this from a business perspective, you can't do 3 title fights and then just a slew of high paid talent on it. You just can't. So you have to find a way to find a middle ground between card quality and just the spectacle of what we're going to see on television. So with the Spear aspect, honestly, I think it's a B+. I think it's a B+. The card quality hurts it a little bit, but I do think the mystique of the Spear has to factor into the overall grade.
I think that's a fair assessment of the card because it's not a bad card. And look, yes, certainly the prelims are a little weaker, but in general, we see this, and for a fight night like this, they're playing into the love letter to Mexico. So it's okay that's it, especially when you're getting 2 title fights that are of high quality. I know people are a little burnt out on the co-main event since we've seen it twice, but realistically, that's a very good fight, and both fights prior were interesting. And so a third thing here, plus the main event, this is between a 1 and a 2-star fight card outside of the Sphere. You factor in the Sphere, and I think it makes I would pay to take a trip to see this fight card. Wouldn't pay quite what they're asking, mind you, but that's a separate issue. Not really here nor there. But if you're there and you win the $25K, then it was an investment. So hopefully one of you listening at home to this right now is going to be in attendance, and you will find all the Easter eggs and do all the other fun stuff that the Sphere provides. But Mike, we got to move now into the actual nuts and bolts of the fight, because the main event, to your point, to my point, to Casey's point earlier, this is an exceptional fight. Sean O'Malley is defending his belt for the second time. Some would argue this is the first true defense, in that Chito Vera was a hand-selected opponent who certainly could have upset him, could have been a difficult test, but probably didn't, quote-unquote, deserve to fight for the belt. No doubt about Merab Dvalishvili. He has earned his place. He is the number one contender in the weight class, a guy that many people think is the best bantamweight on earth. And so, you know, we're going to talk about this fight a lot more. I'm sure there will be more questions about it, but the simple question I have for you, Mike, here is, what are you most curious about? What is your big question surrounding the main event as we are, a little over 24 hours away from it?
Can Merab Dvalishvili not get hit? I mean, really, that's my biggest question, because look, I think Sean's grappling is a bit underrated, but there is a real world that Merab can do Merab things in this fight, that Sean can't move around the way that he typically would move around, that Merab could just rush him and get him uncomfortable early. And then, like you said on BTL yesterday, I think Laura kind of echoed that yesterday, we're going to know immediately how this fight's going to go. We're going to know by the end of the first round, if it gets that far, if we're going to get a 50-45 from Merab Dvalishvili, or Sean O'Malley's going to knock this dude out in the first 3 rounds. Like, we're going to have a very good gauge of this. So this first round, especially maybe the first 3.5 minutes, are so pivotal to the fight. Having said that, Merab is so hittable, and he gets cracked a lot. Now, the man is a demon and can take punishment. Just look at the Marlon Moraes fight. And I went back and watched the Henry Cejudo fight, and there's a lot of people that said he got dropped and hurt and all that stuff, and I don't think that happened. But there were a couple of times that Henry Cejudo opened his eyes a little bit and maybe dropped to a knee at one point. Like, he stung him a couple of times. And if Sean O'Malley hits him clean enough, he's in trouble, man. He's in trouble, and you're giving this guy 25 minutes to find that shot. This is going to end in 12 minutes, or Merab's going to be the new champion. That's just the way I look at this fight. So my biggest question is, because we know Merab is Merab, we know what makes him who he is, and we know what makes Sean O'Malley who he is. My biggest question is, can Merab has he shored up that defense? Does he have a better guard? Is he going to be a little more patient because of that? Because of the quickness and the power that Sean has at 135 pounds? How could he handle the movement? If he hasn't shored that up, I think he's going to get stiffed in this fight. I really do. So that, to me, is my biggest question.
Well, odds makers certainly seem to agree with you, or at least seem to believe that it is less likely than more likely that he did, because Merab Dvalishvili is now an out-and-out underdog, plus 110 comeback for the favorite, and Sean O'Malley is minus 130. Still a very competitively lined fight, but that's been sort of all over the place, up and down. And so I guess the sort of next question I would have here, because I would say that that's actually one of the bigger questions I have. My question is just how the first round looks, because I do think that's a bellwether for the fight, and whoever wins that round wins the fight. I don't think Merab has the ability to adjust well enough in the later rounds to overcome a start that would be very poor for him. And similarly, once Merab gets going, that's a snowball downhill. If O'Malley loses the first, he's cooked. But my question then turns to, let's say that Sean O'Malley does it. Like, let's say Sean O'Malley shows great footwork and he catches him. The same sort of step off, straight shot across the jaw that he landed on Aljamain Sterling. This guy who people have said is the best bantamweight on earth. This guy who was supposed to avenge Aljo's loss. He is now put that dude down and put Aljo down and avenged one of his previous losses, his only previous loss. What sort of a star-making performance can this be for Sean O'Malley, particularly given the surroundings of the greatest live sporting event of all time, the UFC Noche Sphere thing? Like, how big can Sean O'Malley be if he goes and takes care of business against Merab on Saturday?
It's going to give him a boost no matter what. I actually think he's going to need a little help here. I think he's going to need a little help from the rest of the card. I think this card actually has to deliver action-wise. We can't go into the main card with people on Twitter being like, this card is a disaster. The fights have sucked. They've been really boring. This can't be UFC 297. This needs to be Raul Rocha Jr. gets quick finish. We have a couple of bangers, a lot of just exciting action and things to talk about. If we're not writing 4 to 5 recaps off these prelims based on just really cool finishes, we could be in for a little bit of a struggle. Now, I know at the end of the day, the main event is all that matters, but this is a different kind of event. This isn't T-Mobile Arena. This isn't the TD Garden. This certainly isn't the UFC Apex. And we can sort of deal with the slogginess of the beginning if the main event is a good one, but it still kind of sticks out in our minds. You do this at this event and it's a slow start, and we have sort of Dana's thoughts on it like he had with UFC 304. He was like, I'm never giving bonuses, I'm never hiking the bonus money up again because it certainly doesn't make people fight any better. Seems like people are ready to fight this weekend. So I think Sean's going to need a little help. If this event is, the formula is what I think it's going to be in execution, then I think Sean gets a huge boost from this because he caps off an unforgettable night, a card that delivered, a card that people liked and enjoyed. And they didn't have to pay $90 to watch Canelo beat the shit out of a dude that shouldn't even be in the damn ring with him. So I think he's going to get a big boost from this. And whether the fan base gravitates towards him or not, sometimes that just doesn't matter. When the UFC has their eye on somebody and they want to put the promotional push behind somebody, they want to strap the proverbial rockets to them, they're just going to do it whether you like it or not. And they're going to do this to Sean O'Malley. There's a reason that Sean O'Malley is in the main event of this card. I understand why people are a little bit upset about this because of the theme of it all. But even Valentina Shevchenko said, like, this is almost like 3 events in one. It's a Noche event, and then it's like UFC 306 on top of it. This is why Sean O'Malley and Merab are at the top of the bill. So I think get a huge boost from this, Jed. I really do. But I think he's going to need a little bit of help from the rest of the card. I think the rest of the card is going to have to deliver. If the juju is really good all throughout and then Sean just goes out and clips Merab, I think it's going to be massive for him.
It's interesting because I genuinely just have no idea what happens here. Sean O'Malley, I've never really understood his stardom. He doesn't I don't connect with him in the way that people broadly do. There are absolutely Sean O'Malley fans and a good number of them, but I just have no real concept. And so that's one of the angles I'm the most fascinated to see. If Sean can do this and can win this fight, he still got more work to do. Umar coming, baby. Umar is coming. But
maybe
this is, I will be fascinated to see the fallout if he goes out here and delivers a sterling performance like he did against Aljo. I will be absolutely fascinated to see where it goes. So, Mike, let's get down to it. We got a lot of other shit to talk about this week. Main event, Sean O'Malley, Merab Dvalishvili. Who wins? How does it happen?
At the end of the night, at the end of this event, you're going to go to the UFC social media pages and you're going to go to their YouTube channel. And what you're going to see is, what you're going to see is the highlight of Sean O'Malley knocking out Merab Dvalishvili in the second round. They're going to do exactly what they did after UFC 292. I think Sean is I just think he's found his groove right now. And he's always had the talent. I think his brain is catching up with his actual skill set and talent. And Tim Welch and Sean just seem to be like this 2-man duo that are just kind of in a great spot right now. And Merab is incredibly talented. And if Merab goes out there and just Merab Sean O'Malley, would not surprise me at all. I just feel like Sean's going to get him, man. Like there are certain auras that fighters have. There are certain vibes that you feel. Like when you watch it, you're just like, man, this isn't shit talk. This is just a guy who knows what's about to happen. And you don't see it that often. The last time I saw this and felt the vibes, it was a little bit with Sean Strickland, but it was Sean O'Malley at UFC 292. It was a little different because I was in Boston and I was there, but you could feel it in Boston. You could just feel it. Like, it doesn't matter if these guys fought
heading into that weekend.
Yeah, it was one of those things that if they fought 100 times, Aljo could win 99, but this is the one. This night was going to be the one for Sean O'Malley. I'm getting similar vibes here. I think Merab is just a little bit too hittable, and I think Sean gets him out of there in round 2. I think it's going to, in the Tapology page, it's going to say second round knockout, KO, TKO. Sean O'Malley's still the champion.
I sort of agree. I don't think it's going to be round 2. For a while, I was on Sean O'Malley winning a decision because Merab is so tough. I think ultimately Merab is going to get behind early. I frankly just think this is going to be a really, really great performance from Sean O'Malley. because I think he just has better footwork and they're in a big cage and he will not be cornered in the same way Aljo couldn't get into him. But Aljo was so tentative to engage that he just sort of stayed around. I think Merab will start to force the issue, and he's tough enough to take a couple of shots, but I think by the third, fourth round, he'll just be charging headlong into offense, and enough of that will pile up, and Sean O'Malley will get it done. So I am also on Sean O'Malley. I won't be shocked at all if Merab just comes out and hits a snatch single and just immediately is doing Merab things. But like you said, we'll know immediately. Like if Merab wins the first round, I will be betting a whole lot of money on Merab because that's how the fight's going to go. But I officially have Sean O'Malley with a fourth round TKO, getting it done a little bit later and just blowing people's minds and ending the night in an electric fashion. But before we get to that fight, another title fight will take place. The title fight we've seen twice before, Mike. Alexa Grasso defending the women's flyweight belt against her nemesis at this point, Valentina Shevchenko. The two first met, and Alexa Grasso ruined my whole goddamn life, and we don't need to talk anymore about that. And then the second time they met, we don't need to talk about that. Don't worry about that, Mike. The second time they met, it was a very weird contest where I scored Grasso. I thought Grasso should have won the fight. Reasonably, apparently Shevchenko should have won the fight because one judge has truly an inexplicably bad scorecard. The only explanation for giving a 10-8 in the final round is, I did not want Valentina Shevchenko to win, so I fudged the numbers because I didn't think that was cool. We end up with a draw, and now we're back here after a season of tough. Shout out AK. And so, Mike, I guess there are a lot of sort of questions circling around this, but the big one for me, and kind of what I hope that you're going to tell me, are we going to at least get resolution to this rivalry on Saturday? I don't like that. I don't like that.
For now, we are. For now, we're going to get it because they're not going to do it again. We're not going to get fight 4. But I think this is a fight that could be a back pocket fight for like any time they need. I think the UFC is ready to move on from these two ladies fighting each other. As fun as the ending of the first fight was for almost the entire population besides you, and as great as the second fight was, it's been a year since this belt's been defended, and there are women coming, man. We got Manon Fiorot, who weighed in successfully today. We got Rose Namajunas. We got Erin Blanchfield. We got Natty Ice. We got Macy Barber. This division is coming, and we are ready for that door to get burst open and have everybody run through it right now. So, and I think the UFC sees that as well. So I guess as far as the championship is involved, yes, this will be the end of it. As far as a world where these two like slam the door behind their rivalry and lock it shut, I'm not all that sure. And I'll get to why when we get to our predictions for this fight. But yeah, I think there's a world where we see it again. It's just not going to be for the belt or in a spot like this again, if that makes sense.
Mike, if you're about to predict another draw, I'm going to kick you off this program. We're not doing this again. We got too many people. Manon Fiorot weighed in successfully as a backup fighter. So if something happens between now and tomorrow, she can step in for the belt. But odds makers, Mike, Alexa Grasso, slight favorite, -142, come back on Shevchenko +120. That's a damn sight different from the first time they fought, and Valentina Shevchenko was a -650 favorite. It was pretty tough. Pretty tough for those of us who were on her that evening. But nonetheless, my next question for you, Mike, about this fight is kind of who needs it more? Because we talked about this a little bit on BTL yesterday and kind of where either fighter can go from here. Well, what Shevchenko does, whether she wins or loses. And as I've thought about this more, I am honestly not sure like whether Grasso or Shevchenko needs this more. You could sell me on either. And so, Mike, which one is it? Tell me how to believe and feel.
Oh, it's Alexa Grasso. It's not even close. And you sort of laid it out perfectly on BTL yesterday. Valentina can lose this fight and just go right up to 135 and be a player. Like she could get Juliana. If Juliana Pena beats Raquel Pennington, Juliana Pena could call Valentina Shevchenko and be like, hey, you got me once. Let's run it back. Now I'm the champion. I got something you want. So let's go. And I know Kayla Harrison's coming, but at least Valentina gets that opportunity to possibly become a 2-division champion. Like, she could be like Amanda Nunes and have 2 different divisional titles, which is pretty wild to think about. So I think Valentina has a lot more options than Alexa Grasso does. I don't see Alexa Grasso going up to 135. And although she could probably have some success against some of the women fighting in that division, because that division is not very good if you're not aware of it. But yeah, I think all the pressure here is on Alexa Grasso. She's in this spot because of this event. She's at Sphere. She did the Ultimate Fighter. She did all this. And there are still questions about who the better fighter is. Some people feel like Alexa is. Some people feel like Valentina won the second fight. So some people just don't have the clear answer to this. But Alexa's the champion right now, and her options are not as aplenty as Valentina Shevchenko has. So I think Alexa Grasso needs this way more than Valentina Shevchenko does.
And there's a really good argument for that. The argument against it is just that Grasso is still fairly young, former champion. If she, loses this fight, she still has a very high likelihood of fighting for the belt again in the future. Whereas Shevchenko is probably out of the bantamweight conversation with the loss here, or not the bantamweight, the flyweight conversation. And then bantamweight certainly is an option, but the Kayla Harrison of it all kind of makes that a weird situation. I don't know. It's one of the angles I'm really, really fascinated about this fight. But the truth is, this fight is probably less interesting than the main event for me in a lot of ways, just because, frankly, we've already seen it. We've seen him fight 40-plus minutes. They're going to do some more of it, probably for 25 more, if we're being honest with ourselves. But, Mike, let's talk about who's going to win. Well, give us the breakdown. Give us your official prediction for tomorrow night's co-main event.
I think this fight's going to be really, really fun. I think both are going to bring their absolute best. My pick is Valentina Shevchenko. And
wow!
mostly, there's 2 reasons. One, I thought she won the second fight. She made some mistakes in that second fight. She basically gave that one away in round 5. But I still think she won. And she was Greg Maddux in that fight. She didn't have her fastball, but she was painting those corners, and she did enough, in my opinion, to win that fight. And one judge kind of screwed her. So she didn't have her absolute best and still beat Alexa Grasso, who I thought was really, really good that night. The other thing is just straight math, Jed. I cannot see and fathom a world, no matter how old Valentina Shevchenko is, no matter how battle-tested Valentina Shevchenko is, no matter the mileage she has on her, I cannot see her fighting the same woman 3 times in a row and not winning one of these fights. Even if I feel like she won the second fight, the official scorecard says it's a draw. She did not win. So technically she's fought her twice and did not win either of them. I just can't see a world where she loses again. I just don't see it. Like, I have to play the dozens. I got to play the math here. And Valentina Shevchenko is one of the greatest fighters of all time. I can't even see her going winless in 3 fights in general, let alone against the same opponent and having the time to prepare for her. She's had a year. She's had a year to reflect on this and get ready for it. She spent a lot of time with Alexa Grasso. And Valentina Shevchenko, as dangerous as she is as a fighter, she is cunning as just a professional athlete and a combat sports athlete. There's something about her that's just different. She is just an absolute warrior. Not saying Alexa isn't, but there's just something a little different about Valentina Shevchenko. So because of that, I'm picking Valentina Shevchenko. I don't think it's going to be a clear-cut 49-46 or anything like that. We could take a trip to Splitty City, but I think Valentina squeaks it out, man. I think she gets it done and wins the belt, and then things are going to get real weird and interesting.
I love this. I was absolutely not anticipating it. Tomorrow night for the watch party, we got to do something because we will be in opposition. I, the leader of the bullet train, the driver of the Chevy truck, I can't do it. You made a great argument in saying that it's hard to envision Valentina Shevchenko not beating anyone in 3 tries. That's the most compelling argument I've heard for Shevchenko. The other compelling argument I have for Shevchenko is that she probably should win. Like, she should have won the second fight and then punted it away with an absolutely stunningly idiotic head and arm throw in the final round that literally cost her reclaiming the belt. And she was very clearly winning the first fight until an idiotic head and arm throw gave up her back. No, this was a spinning attack, not a head and arm throw.
Yeah.
Still, an idiotic spin gave up her back, and Grasso jumped on it. But that's twice. And fool me once, shame on you. Fool you twice, shame on me. Fool you 3 times, I'm a freaking idiot if I don't think she's going to get out there and have this fight well in hand and then do something where she just gives her back up for reasons that are clear only to her. It is incredibly frustrating to watch one of the most physically gifted female fighters of all time, one of the best female fighters of all time, just like brain fart so hard in a very similar fashion both times, particularly when you're heavily invested in her both professionally and monetarily. And so the thing I keep coming back to in this fight, and the thing that nobody can kind of talk me away from, is tomorrow night will not be the best Valentina Shevchenko we've ever seen. She is 36, about to be 37. She's been fighting for 20 years. That's just not how the human body works. Physiologically will not be her best tomorrow night. Alexa Grasso will be her best because she is still in the prime of her athletic career. She is still getting better every time out. I thought she was significantly better in their rematch than she was in the first fight. She got the finish in the first fight. Kudos to her. I thought she looked substantially better in their second fight because she keeps getting better. And so if Shevchenko couldn't beat a worse version of Grasso when she was better, it just seems unlikely to me that she is going to beat a better version of Grasso when she is worse. Hope I'm wrong, frankly. Again, I'm as big a Valentina supporter as there is out there, but I have to just stick with to me, the obvious play, and I'll feel dumb if I'm wrong. So I've got Alexa Grasso winning a decision this time and winning a comfortable one to finally set this aside, move on. Shevchenko can go up to 135. Grasso can fight Manon Fiorot, and we can all move on. And Mike, we're going to move on because we got other things to talk about. I got one more fight to talk about before we get to a smattering of things. And it is, of course, the feature bout of the evening, a featherweight contest that looks like it may actually happen, Mike, between Brian Ortega and Diego Lopez. This was originally scheduled to happen in UFC 303. Brian Ortega, the day before weigh-ins, was like, actually, we got to make it a lightweight because I can't make the featherweight. Still looked bad making the limit, and then pulls out hours before their actual fight with an illness as a result of kind of his deprived immune system, et cetera, et cetera. We all remember what happened. Dan Ige just drives in to the T-Mobile Arena, frankly, and one of the most like awesome moments that's happened in the sport as long as I've been following it. So the big question for you, Mike, does this fight actually happen tomorrow, or is some other act of God going to intervene so Brian Ortega and Diego Lopez continue to not face each other?
What's Dan Ige doing tomorrow night?
I hope he's on speed dial.
I mean, he's preparing for a fight. He's fighting Lerone Murphy in a month. So, I mean, but to be real though, this fight's happening. This fight's going to happen. And it's going to be good. It's going to be fun as hell. Diego Lopez is going to swing his ass off and try to knock Brian Ortega out. He's probably going to drop Ortega in round 1. And then Ortega is just going to be unkillable as he usually is, unless he's fighting Max Holloway. So yeah, I think this fight's going to be great. It's going to happen. It's probably going to be the fight of the night if I had to take a wager here. And yeah, it's going to happen, and it's going to be a good one. And it's going to have some significant play on what happens at 145 pounds, more than likely.
Well, put a pin in the possible fight of the night. We're going to come back to that a little bit later with a question. But the other big question is, as we talked about this fight previously, like everyone knows it's going to be a fun fight. Brian Ortega, for as much as I may not care for him as a fighter, he is undeniably a fun action oriented fighter because he doesn't have defense. So it's always super fun. Diego Lopez, the breakout fighter of last year, just barnstorming the UFC and sort of what he has become. This is going to be awesome. But the bigger question to me is not, is this going to be cool? It's who does need this one more? Because more than any other fight on this card, I am absolutely intrigued about where we go from here with either man on a win and a loss. So who needs this fight more, Mike?
Probably Ortega. I mean, look, he could still go up to 55 and do stuff, but I mean, he's gonna have to climb a ladder at 55. There's just so many guys that are right there that could give him some serious fits. So it's better to like put yourself in a better position if you're going to go up to 55 coming off of a win over a guy like Diego Lopez, especially if it's a really fun fight. You give the fans something to gravitate towards and get excited about. The thing about Brian Ortega as well is that people don't want to give up on him, but they're kind of close right now. And I know a lot of the stuff is just the, whatever happened at 303, it just wasn't good, dealing with a lot of stuff, and he was ill, and some things you can control and some things you can't. And it seems like by all accounts, Brian really couldn't control this stuff, but this is the MMA fan base. And while there's a small percentage of people who are understanding, there's a large percentage who aren't. And especially those who have been following Brian Ortega and just seeing how high his ceiling can be, and him trying to climb that brass ring and coming up just a couple of rungs short over and over again, and then having to pull out of this fight, the whole weight situation the day before UFC 303 to not fighting at all. You feel for the man, but at the same time, not all of this fan base, the vast majority of them are just not that forgiving. So if we go from what happened at 303 to him getting dusted by Diego Lopez, it's not a good situation for him. Now, you and I might look at this differently, but there's a big grouping of fans who will just destroy this man. And it's going to be really hard for him to get that back. I'm not saying he can't, but if he goes up to 55, I think it's going to be tough sledding for him, man. It's going to be tough sledding for him anyways. And there are some fun fights for him, but I kind of think he needs this one. Even if he goes to 55 after this, I think he needs to do so with the win to get the best opportunities in front of him. I don't think he wants to go in there and be fighting Benoit Saint-Denis right now. Like that's a tough freaking fight for him. It'd be fun, but I don't think it goes well for him. I think it's just a really awful matchup for him. But if he goes out there and has a great showing against Diego Lopez, there could be a really fun fight for him. He could get a guy like Dustin Poirier or something like that, like a Charles Oliveira. Like those are feasible. I'm not saying he gets it, but they're attainable if he wins this fight, while they're not attainable if he goes out and loses Diego Lopez.
Yeah, so I wrote a lot of these questions last night, sort of just kind of thinking about conversation piece and where I want to go. And when I wrote this one, I really couldn't settle because Lopez is just on the cusp, right? Like he is right there. And this is the win that elevates him. And I think ultimately I came down to agree with you because I do think Ortega needs it more, though I didn't really consider what you just said about him needing this to open those doors at lightweight. Because in my head, I was just like, I don't give a shit. Let's put him up at lightweight. It'll be dope. Like you can't make 10 fights in the sport I'm more interested than watching Brian Ortega, Justin Gaethje, or Brian Ortega, Benoit Saint-Denis. Like those fights are chef's kiss, but those aren't givens if he loses. And so that's a really good point. The point I was kind of coming back to settle on is that Diego Lopez is a made man right now. Like what he did at 303 and what Brian Ortega gifted him basically by saying, YOLO, I'll fight Danny Ige on 3 hours notice. Like, I don't think it matters if he loses tomorrow at all. Like the difference in a loss for Diego Lopez tomorrow is that he is not fighting for the belt next, but he is still probably like 1, maybe 2 wins away from a belt and a big name opponent, a big opportunity because the fan base loves this guy. The UFC loves this guy. Dana loves what he has already done for them. And so, yeah, if Brian Ortega does a Brian Ortega thing and gets him, I don't think that's really going to hurt Diego Lopez that much, especially if Ortega ends up bailing on 145 to pursue lightweight ambitions. Then he's not even standing in the way of the title fight. Whereas if Ortega has any desire to be a UFC champion, he has to win this fight because he's never going to get to a belt at lightweight. It's just not a thing that's going to happen for him. And he's not really in line remotely to even get a title shot now because of sort of the logjam at featherweight at the moment. So I think you're right. I do think Brian Ortega needs it, but this is a fight that I'm absolutely fascinated by tomorrow. So let's get to it.
I just want to add one more thing.
Yeah.
And the biggest reason why I pick Ortega is something you just touched on. Diego is in rarefied air right now, where wins and losses, sure, in his eyes and his bank account, they matter, but to the fan base, they don't. They just want to see the guy. Like, he's getting in that, he's not quite at Derek Lewis, Kevin Holland territory. We're just like, oh shit, they're fighting. That's awesome. Whatever happens, happens. And they have like really good attitudes about it, win or lose. And we just want to see him fight. I think Diego's almost there. And plus, he's got that grace. Not a lot of fighters have grace with the fan base right now. He's Terry Francona right now, where Francona won a World Series with the Red Sox, and then they sucked balls for like 3 straight years. But we're like, yeah, but he still won a championship in 2004. Like 2000,
broke
like,
the curse, baby. That's all that matters.
Exactly. So that's kind of where Diego is right now, where he gets a little bit of grace, might even get a little more in the next fight. Not a lot of fighters get that right now. Brian Ortega, I certainly don't think has anywhere near the amount of grace amongst the fan base as Diego Lopez does right now.
I think that's 100% true. But Mike, we got a couple other things to hit, and then we want to go to questions. So let's the last fight we'll talk about. So give us your prediction, give us your breakdown. How did things go on Saturday for the feature fight?
We might. So can you put Jed back on the screen for a second? Can we do a split here? I feel like in most worlds we would be on opposite sides here. I feel like we're on the same wavelength here. I can tell you right now that I have a bet on this fight, and it's not on Diego Lopez. It's on Brian Ortega. I'm betting on Brian Ortega. The dog money is there. I had a bet on him at UFC 303 as well. I think this is a closer line fight than the betting odds indicate. And I know that isn't necessarily like how you break down fights, but I do think there's betting value on Brian Ortega. But the biggest thing to me is Brian's just fought better dudes, man. Like, he's just been in there with better competition than Diego Lopez has. And Diego's fought some pretty good guys, but Brian's been in there with friggin' everybody and in their primes. He's been in there with Volk, almost beat him, was seconds away. He's been in there with Max Holloway. He's been in there with, a good, not washed version of Korean Zombie. He's been in there with Frankie Edgar at the top of his game, and Cub Swanson and Hanato Moicano, and like all these guys who were just really good as he was making his way up the ladder. Diego is fun as hell, and he's super good, and he's got so much talent, but I got to go with the experience here. I feel like this is closer to a 50-50 fight, and my biggest weighing factor is the guy who has just been in there with the higher level competition, and I just don't know I think if Diego wins, he's got to finish him. I think the longer this goes, the more it favors Brian Ortega. So give me Brian Ortega by decision here in a fun fight.
We are on the same page. I'm taking Brian Ortega, both because this is pretty well known at this point for not being a huge supporter of Brian Ortega as a fighter. And so I'm insulated. Now, if he wins, I will still win money. So it won't infuriate me that he wins in a very silly fashion. And if he loses, I just lost money, but I get to be right. And I love being right more than losing money. So it's fine. But also, I actually do agree. I think this fight is at least a pick 'em. And I think people are just really high on the Diego Lopez train for good reason. Dude's obviously extremely fun, extremely talented. I don't think he's not going to get a 60-second finish of Brian Ortega. Brian Ortega does not get finished. And the list of people who have beaten him are all UFC champions. Like, he is the gatekeeper to the belt, not to the stars. He is the gatekeeper to the title, because the only dudes who have beat Brian Ortega have held UFC gold. And one of those dudes held an interim belt. And then in the rematch, Brian Ortega beat the soul out of him. It is just, I'm not saying Diego Lopez isn't that, but we haven't seen that. Whereas I have seen Brian Ortega go hammer and tongs, the very best fighters in the world, and win more often than not against a higher quality of opposition than Diego has yet fought. And so I'm going to stick with the tried and true guy. And if I'm wrong, I'm wrong. That's fine. So I have Brian Ortega. I have Brian Ortega locking up a sub in the third round, because it just feels like a really Brian Ortega way to win. Like I found a guillotine or whatever it is, because he has such a predatory offense that kind of springs out of nowhere. But I do think we are in for an absolute barn burner of a fight. And it's like this is a really, really Apex Prime sort of level feature bout. Like this is exactly what we should be hoping for a feature contest.
What
Yeah, go for it.
you asked earlier about if Sean O'Malley goes out and dusts up Merab, what this does for his star power, right? And if Brian wins, and even if he gets a third round submission, I don't think he grows that much. But let's just say, and I don't think it's going to happen, but let's just say Diego Lopez catches Brian Ortega quick, does what he did at UFC 300 to Brian Ortega. What becomes of him? Because he's already at,
so what happens is unfortunate, but it's what will happen. If he does that, he should, no doubt about it, be sitting cage side for the the Max Topuria fight. And next up, he won't be because Volk has dibs. Unless Volk does do Volk's been talking about maybe fighting Gaethje or Poirier or doing that. And frankly, that's the outcome I want. I don't care about Volk fighting for the featherweight belt again. I know I'm not him. He wants to do it. There's so many fun lightweight matchups and sort of legacy. Poirier Volk is like the fight to make. To me, it makes all the sense in the goddamn world. And they should just go do that and do a separate thing and let Diego fight if he comes out here and finishes Ortega in 60 seconds. But what will actually happen instead is, or because of how timing works, Diego Lopez will just fight the winner of Movsar versus Aljo in a no doubt about it #1 contender match. That's not bad. Certainly not bad, but there are other ways this could go that I'd like more, but I think that seems very likely.
He might be the backup. Like if he goes out there and wrecks Brian Ortega, he might be the backup fighter for the main event in Abu Dhabi. Like there's a real world that happens. That's a pretty damn good place to be.
If Volk doesn't want to do it, certainly could happen. So a lot of opportunities with the win. Some other opportunities, Mike. Here's an opportunity for you because there are only 7 other fights we haven't talked about. We're not going to get into them unless you guys have questions at the end. But I do want to give you an opportunity to throw some shine on the underrated, the unsung, MVP fight of the card. Your low-key banger, as it were, Mike. What is the fight that's not getting attention that deserves a little bit more shine?
This is the easiest question of all time. It's Daniel Zellhuber versus Esteban Ribovic. Fight is incredible. It's so good. It's one of those fights where, because I think I first reported on Heck of a Morning that this was like the direction they were going to go, but it wasn't like officially official until Dana announced the entire card. But Jesus, man, like this is one of those fights where the first thought in your mind is, oh man, this fight's incredible. And then the second thought in your mind is this too soon to match these two guys up? Because if we wait 18 months, 24 months, these guys could be fighting for like a top 5 spot or even better, fighting for a title shot. Like that's how talented both of these guys are. I am incredibly high on Daniel Zellhuber. I think he is one of the most naturally gifted fighters. And this is not hyperbole. He is one of the most naturally gifted fighters I've ever seen compete in the UFC. Now he's young. He's a young man, and the mindset hasn't developed with the skill set just yet. I talk to Eric Nixick about Daniel Zellhuber all the time. Eric Nixick compares Daniel Zellhuber to buying a Lamborghini for the first time when you've been driving a Toyota Camry for the last decade. Toyota Camry will get you where you need to go. Tremendous gas mileage, reliable, dependent. You know exactly what you're getting here. And then you get this Lamborghini and you hop in there. You didn't even test drive it. It takes you a while to sort of figure out how it runs. What's the best mode? How do you do it? What's the right speed? Where should we drive it? Should we drive it on the highway? Should we drive it on the main roads? Like, what should we do with this thing? And then eventually you figure it out. And I feel like that's a great comparison to how I view Daniel Zellhuber as well. I think the more time you spend working on it, the more time you spend behind that wheel, the better it's going to get, the better the performances are going to get. And I think we've seen that. He's got a little bit of mental maturity to do in that cage, but the talent is there, man. He's one of the most talented young fighters that I've seen in quite some time, maybe ever. And I think he's going to go out there and beat Esteban Ribovic, who's a very dangerous cat, but I think Zellhuber's just got more of a complete game. I really like this kid, and I like Ribovic. What he did to Terrence McKinney was friggin' ridiculous. Like, you just don't see knockouts like that, and I hope that knockout gets as much shine as I think it will at the end of the year when we talk about the year-end awards. But golly, man, it's just a great fight. 2 55ers in the best division in the sport, getting after it. One's going to be a top 15 guy in the next year. The other is going to have to climb a little harder. Fight friggin' rules.
It's hard to go wrong with that. My pick for fight of the night. I love that fight a whole ton. I think Ribovic is a very live dog in that fight at a big price as well. But because you talked about it, I will throw the other one that I think is nobody is talking about this fight, and I think it's crying shame. Manuel Torres versus Ignacio Bahamondes. That is going to be hammer and tongs. Like Manuel Torres is 3-0 in the UFC, all first round knockouts, all performance bonuses. This dude is just lighting the world on fire when he does get into the cage. It's not a little like he's not been the most active, but when he is active, boy, it is unbelievable. And Ignacio Bahamondes is just a scrapper, dude. Like this is a dude who's incredibly fun to watch. Like this is the exact definition of a low key banger. It's on the prelims. Like this is. I personally have an investment in Manuel Torres for our fantasy draft as well. So a little bit of that for me going on, but I am absolutely stoked to watch this one. So that'll be my low-key banger. Mike, the last thing here. A lot of decent fights. I mean, look,
Edgar Shira's Josh Van is going to be it's going to be insane. That fight is just going to be insane.
I have concerns about that fight because of Josh Van's quick turnaround from getting knocked out like 63 days. I don't feel great about it, but look, the final main card fight, which we didn't mention at all, Ronaldo Rodriguez taking on Ode Osborne. I didn't really care at all about that fight. And then they sold it. They did their job at the press conference. The UFC has kind of gone away from doing these big stage press conferences for all but the biggest events. And this is why they should do more of them, because who cared about that fight whatsoever until they get up there, and they're the ones with the most juice out of anyone at the presser yesterday. They're the ones who are getting their name out there and making you stand up and take notice as they are the main card opening fight. On the merits, I'm still not sure how fun the fight will be. It won't be bad, but Ode Osborne's not the most thrilling fighter. But I'm more interested in that now. Irene Aldana versus Norma Dumont in your prelim main event. It is what it is. Might not be bad. Irene Aldana can be fun. Norma Dumont, a little less so. Bahamondes Torres, we talked about. Yasmin Uruguay versus Ketlin Souza. That Uruguay, we know what that fight is. Uruguay could be, somebody to watch. Edgar Chira's Josh Van could be fun. My main concern there is just the quick turnaround for Josh Van. He's 22. I kind of wish they were being a little safer with him, but so it goes. And then
Chira's is a finisher, but he's not like a big hitter. You know what I mean? Like he's more of a just drag you to the mat and submit you kind of guy. He's a tricky dude down there. So I get the concern. It makes sense, but Edgar's not a guy typically that's going to go out there and just annihilate dudes on the feet.
Yeah, I hope so. I hope he doesn't, certainly. But, particularly coming off the, just last night watching Tua get his 8th concussion in 3 years or whatever insane thing it is. Like, maybe you should take longer than 60 days to come back from getting stoned like you did there. But then the opening fight of the evening, Raul Rosas Jr., Richie Lang, we know exactly what that fight is. We don't really need to talk about it unless you guys want to talk about it. But before we get to the peeps, last question I have for you, Mike, is very simple. 10 fights. There will be, theoretically, 4 bonuses given out. 1 fight of the night to 2 people. 2 performances of the night. Let's play the game, Mike. Who is going to walk out with performance bonuses tomorrow evening?
Ortega Lopez, Sean O'Malley, and he shouldn't, because I think there's going to be better finishes. Raul Rosas Jr.
Oh man, I didn't want to do the Raul Rosas Jr. thing, so I'm not going to. I'm gonna zig. I'm gonna say that Zelhuber Ribovic takes your fight of the night. It won't at all surprise me if Ortega Lopez does. But I'm gonna say Zelhuber gets it with Ribovic. I'm gonna say Sean O'Malley gets it because like I said, I think he's gonna get a knockout in the main event. And then this is where I will go. I'm picking Brian Ortega to grab a sub. If Brian Ortega submits Diego Lopez, I think he's gonna get one. So that will be it. And Casey, get yourself on in here because it's time for us to talk to the wonderful people who make MMA fighting so special. It's the fans. It's you guys. I've seen a million chats. There were also some non-super chats that I specifically wanted to talk about, so I hate you to pull those. But Casey, Any thoughts before we dive into the questions? Anything that we were talking about that you thought, man, that guy is an idiot, or I hadn't thought about that? Any big takeaways before we dive into the Q&A?
Yeah, you guys all made sense. No, don't 100% agree with everything, but you all came. I enjoyed your point of view that you had, and yeah, I actually I like this. I like this card. Yeah, I like it. 10 fights. Oh, do you think Rosas Jr. should have been the first fight in the pay-per-view? I personally think so.
I was surprised he was not. I get what they're doing, and so I'm okay with it. I think they want to get him there to be the opening fight of the evening, get people in early for this big epic show, start things off as hot as they can. And so I get it, but I was surprised, frankly, that he wasn't, because their normal way to do business is he's just the opening main card fight.
Yeah, just find it kind of odd. And I thought it was interesting that Dana was like, remember when Dana started the presser, he was like, make sure everyone gets there early. I thought he was going to say, make sure you get there for Rosa's fight, but he was like, no, make sure you get there at 6:30 before the pay-per-view portion starts. So I don't know, just thought that was an interesting statement from Dana. I've never heard Dana say that at presser. Everyone arrive early, so I was like, okay. So,
it doesn't care when you arrive, in general.
Yeah, you
but for this one, it matters.
Yeah.
You want the
which would tell me that all the cool stuff, you're not going to see too much cool stuff, I guess, during the prelims. All the I don't know what's going to happen, but
it doesn't seem likely based on the stuff that the reporting and the Dana was very explicit. It's a show that's going to build, and so certainly they're saving their big guns, I think, for the main the main card, and so it'll just start slow and kind of crescendo up and up and up as the evening goes on. It's at least my read.
Yeah. I actually, most of the time I was just still thinking about the just the production and how it's going to work and how the walkout's going to work. Like they're walking through a crowd, or they just, I don't know. So all that's going to be fun. But
genuinely no idea. Yeah. All the production stuff, I'm fascinated to see just how they do stuff.
And I'm also really interested in
what are they playing on the screen during fights?
Yeah, because I think Ortega talked about it during
that takes away from the fight.
Ortega talked about this would be the first time in whatever that he's going to be having the crowd only on one side of him. This side is all it's just screens.
Yeah,
it's just going to be unique, and it's just I'm just really fascinated about how they're going to do this, because it is because that place is designed for live events. It's not designed for sporting TV events. And so that's just going to be, how are they going to do it? Especially with no lighting rig above it. So obviously you're going to have lots of spotlights coming from very far away. And you have concerts there, but concerts you can have cool dramatic lighting. But this is a sporting event. You can't have that movie type of lighting during a sporting event. So I just don't know what they're going to do and how they're going to do it. And you know what? The UFC is daring to be great.
I knew you were going to say that. I hate it. I am genuinely fascinated by it, though, because one of the biggest points that's been made by several people to me is just, this isn't a concert. Yes, you can do cool things at the Sphere because you don't really need to see musicians perform. You want to, and there's certainly parts of it, but if you're distracted by looking at the big bright lights or whatever going on, yeah, that's fine. Whereas a fist fight is a very different thing, where I just truly don't even know what you can put on the big screen that won't take away from the action of the contest. Yeah, I'm sure they've thought about it. I want to see what they came to.
I'm just waiting for when someone takes an elbow and the doctor's like, "Oh, we need to check it out," and they open the cut up and there's a giant gash of someone's skull 6 stories wide. So I'm really.
I hope that doesn't happen. I don't need that.
Hey, man, that's what we pay for.
That's what some people are paying for, not us.
Hey, Dana, Dana will tweet that out immediately.
Well, for sure. Dana's going to tweet a lot of things. Let's pop to the questions, because we've already been here for about an hour. So let's answer a few of y'all's questions and get ready for the rest of the festivities. From Chase Douglas. Hey, Jed, how are you such a Brian Ortega hater and a Mackenzie Dern believer? They are so close to having inverse careers. kind of answered your own question. They're like the exact inverse of each other. And I can see all the hope and wonderful part. I can see what Mackenzie Dern can be and will never get to, because she shows us the flashes of what is possible, but she cannot actually achieve. Whereas Brian Ortega, I am firmly of the belief that he is his career is, this is the high end outcome for his career. If you played his career over 1 million times, I do not believe he's anywhere near as successful as he is. And so I can't imagine him being better. I can imagine him being substantially worse, but I cannot imagine him being better. And that's why he frustrates me, because I do not believe he is good. And yet he very obviously is extremely good. And it is a hard thing for me to reckon with.
Is it simply the defense?
Yes, it is that he abhors defense. Again, this is idiot lizard brain Jed. I'm not saying I'm right. I am acknowledging I am wrong, but I cannot get around the fact that this man does not defend himself, and clearly doesn't defend himself because he can't be killed, because he's just like, yeah, why do I need to learn defense? No one can knock me out. It's fine. But it is hard. Like, it is impossible to watch him and be like, that's a very good fighter, because he gets hit so much.
All right.
I'm wrong. I want to be so clear. I am the asshole here. This is nobody's problem but my own. Also from Chase, Ortega's going to walk through a hellacious beating, but if he pulls off that sub while on the brink of death, it's going to be effing amazing. I think that's an entirely plausible event here, because that's how his career has largely gone. Like, other than the Korean Zombie fight,
Frankie,
Brian
maybe?
Ortega has.
Yeah.
Frankie just happened really fast, and it was one big offense. But Korean Zombie is the only dude he has really beaten pillar to post. He has had to suffer through the offense and then overcome, which, testament to him. He keeps doing it. But I think that's entirely plausible here, because that's how his game works, and it's hard for me to understand. But
here we are.
Just where I'm at. It's where we are, guys. The Last Stand. If Canelo somehow got knocked out in an upset, would that steal the shine of Noche UFC? This is a very interesting question, because, Mike, we talked a little bit about this on BTL yesterday, and you certainly asked some questions, because the boxing community seems to have sort of gravitated to this weekend as a LOL, UFC is going to get done up in Vegas because Canelo's fighting, and you're building the biggest UFC event of all time, but Canelo's fighting, so you're not even going to be the most important thing. None of us considered the possibility of Canelo losing because it's so far-fetched, but what happened? If Canelo loses tomorrow, are we talking about the Sphere on Monday?
Yeah. We sure
Why?
are.
Think?
Outside of MMA circles? No, I don't think so.
Not in MMA circles, obviously, where it's boxing, but in the broader athletic contest, if the Sphere show goes off as literally as well as you could imagine it, versus Canelo gets upset, what is the talking point on ESPN, First Take on Monday? Which one are they going to first?
Probably Canelo. But First Take, you got to remember, too, ESPN is the broadcast partner of the UFC, so they could do whatever the hell they want. It's Canelo on the broader combat spectrum. Him losing would be huge, but this would be like me flying to Paris 2 months ago and just running in the 400-meter dash and winning the gold medal. That would be a more believable story than Berlanga knocking out Canelo. So that's kind of where I'm at right now. It would just be such a crazy thing.
You got speed on you, huh?
So,
you heard it here first.
So,
Mike Heck is a 400-meter all-star.
I can sprint. I'm not. Yeah, you should see me in softball when I burn the outfielders. I'm running
round
like
the
the wind, baby. But yeah, obviously it would. But it's not going to happen. So not really anything to think about.
Wait, I think even if Canelo loses a close decision on every on whatever CNN.com, it'll be it won't be the header, but it'll be on the front page. Canelo loses, decision, and it's not going to be, whoa, the Spear looked really cool. It's just
I,
yeah.
I agree it's wildly unlikely, but some of us might have suggested that it's not going to happen that Alexa Grasso becomes the women's flyweight champion. Some people may have foolishly said that's an impossibility and simply cannot happen. And some of those people may have been incorrect. So, it would be funny as hell if Berlanga upsets him. I would find it unbelievably amusing.
Well, luckily we have a watch party, so we'll catch everyone's reaction.
We do have a watch party tomorrow night. Same time, same place, same everything. I got the 2 screens set up. We're gonna have the Canelo Berlanga fight card going as well. So we're ready for it all.
It's gonna be interesting how the times work out, because generally, I don't know. Yeah, it's gonna. When was the last time I don't think ever. Has there been 2 UFC? Vegas pay-per-views going head to head against like this?
Probably.
This is a Jose question. I can't think of any.
I mean, I can't think of nothing recent with the UFC and pay-per-view wise, at least. I mean, I know maybe like East Coast or West Coast pay-per-views, but nothing in the same town. This is gonna be kind of interesting.
Being in Vegas would be pretty interesting right now. Sort of see what the general town vibe is, if how it goes. I don't know.
Dude,
it's freaking $90 for this card, by the way. For the
Canelo card?
It's $90. Who the fuck is going to spend $90 on this?
How much
we
is
know
UFC
the
card?
outcome.
80.
Canelo.
Unless ESPN kicked the price again, but should be 80.
You're buying it for one fight that is going to be as one-sided as it gets, and you have the audacity to charge $90 for it.
$90 is a lot of money for pay-per-view of that quality.
No, you kind of talk about boxing people crapping on the spear card. Is this from big boxing media? Because I'm not on social media like that, so I don't see it. So where's it coming from? Fans, or like where are you hearing this? The comments, or is it like just like
media too?
Media
too. They're seeing
and
reports
social media
about ticket sales and all this stuff, and they're like, "See, it's because Canelo came to town and whooped their ass." When in reality, it's not really the case. So, I mean, the ticket prices are ridiculous. So that part is true. But to sit there and say, our event's better, the UFC's event is a absolute failure and a disaster, but Canelo in all this is tremendous, is just short-sighted and ridiculous. We haven't even had the friggin' event yet. Like, I feel it's just a little too soon to start dancing on the graves of UFC brass and UFC 306 and TKO when the event hasn't even happened yet. I'm looking at the ticket prices right now. There's like maybe 75 seats available that haven't been sold already. And then everything else that's there is a resale ticket that is just kind of on sale right now. So this is a pretty legitimate sellout right now. Like it's a pretty legitimate sellout. It's going to sell out by tomorrow.
It's going to be sold out.
So
yeah.
It's going to sell out. It's going to do it's going to do a gigantic gate. It's going to be a giant success. I don't know. I don't understand.
Look, if it's a giant success, why isn't the UFC doing it again? Or was this promotional just kind of talk from Dana? You better buy it now. But yeah, but if it's a success, then they're making lots of money. Then do it.
Sorry. I think they will do it again. I think they don't want to be committed to doing it until they see how it goes.
Like the BMF.
Because
BMF's one thing. Yeah.
It makes it feel special. It makes it feel singular. You can get people to come in, pay exorbitant prices. I don't necessarily think this will be yearly or they'll do it next year, but I would be very, very surprised if this thing goes over extremely well and they don't send it again. I think this will be a new sort of break in case of special occasions sort of situation for them where they don't want to create a pattern, but I will be astonished if this goes over super well and they don't go back to the well again.
Yeah, I keep going back.
It's actually exactly like the BMF belt, frankly. Yeah. It's like, sometimes we just need something cool.
Yeah, I keep going back to my head when Dana says it's a one-off thing.
It's obviously expensive.
But you're paying for it. People, it's not expensive and charging the same prices.
It's obviously extremely expensive. It's not. And I also expect that the more you do it, the cheaper it gets.
Cheaper it
Like
gets,
they don't
yeah.
have to rehire Glenn Weiss to do this every time. Once you have a pattern, once you have built out the infrastructure and how to do lights and all that, I think this will get cheaper. And so I believe we will see this more. But for the time being, under promise, over deliver.
Fair. I just can't. It's just like maybe there's a reason people haven't done sporting events in this place, and we'll find out Saturday night.
And that's the thing. It also could totally be that like there is a non-zero chance that this does not go land nearly as well as everyone hopes. And the only way we're going to know is come Sunday morning.
Yeah. That's exciting. That is exciting. All right, a few more super chats. Let's get them out.
Slick VM, as a Mexican, UFC Noche Latina is a slap in the face. Plus, I'm not a fan of the clown show. I don't entirely know what this means. So, all right, well, okay.
Thank you.
I don't like O'Malley.
Oh,
yeah. Oh, is that
I
the
don't.
Latina?
What's the Noche Latina thing? I don't know.
Yeah, I know. I mean, I get the Noche running it with O'Malley and Merab is odd, but here we are.
I do understand that.
It's like two events. It's like two events in one. That's like how it's being presented, essentially. Like Noche UFC sort of ends with the co-main event, and then it shifts over to the better fight. Like, let's be honest, it's the better fight with the more well-known names. It's not even
it's more well-known. Who knows? I'm not sure about better fight, but it's definitely more well-known.
It's the more intriguing fight by a landslide. Like Grasso Shevchenko is a great fight, and I certainly have questions about it. But to say there's more intriguing layers to that fight than there is O'Malley Merab, I just don't agree with that.
Okay,
I would agree with Mike in this situation.
Yeah. Well,
we've just seen Grasso Shevchenko plenty.
Yeah, striker, whatever. We'll move on. I'm gonna skip this. I know LR. I know you paid $2 for this, but I'm not gonna put that up there. I think it's kind of a silly question, but I got this one.
LR, I prefer John Rocker, second best closer ever. I believe this was when you pulled out the old Greg Maddux callback for not having the fastball but painting the corners. Shout out to John Rocker and Eastbound and Down.
Jonathan Papelbon, baby.
Achilles, Jed, bet all your money and lose on Shevchenko again. I already did that once. There's a clip out there on the internet. You can find it. And I'm good. I don't need to experience that again. But I might bet your money. I might take this $5 and do it and bet every subsequent donation you give to us.
Well, that's actually Mike's. That's Mike's Duncan money. So you got to talk to Mike.
You do not get Duncan tomorrow. Not from Achilles. This is my $5.
I'm getting Duncan tomorrow. Tell you that right.
Joey Miller, biggest conditional popularity boost after UFC 306. So I'm assuming the conditional here being winning. So who, if they won, would get the biggest popularity boost? I mean, I think it just has to be Sean O'Malley, right?
Yeah, without question.
I was going to go Merab because Sean O'Malley's already a star. He's already A-lister. Merab would then be the A-lister, depending on his. From where they are to where they're going.
I say Merab would be champion. I don't know if I'd be there, but I do think beating Merab at this major event has a really good chance to be a catapulting sort of opportunity for Sean O'Malley. He still has to get past Umar. There's still a big hurdle, but if he gets past Merab at an event that is supposed to be such an epic one, I think they can do a lot for making him a cross promote, like a mainstream crossover household type name.
Yeah, this feels. I mean, it's obviously different because Sean's the champion, but this feels somewhat reminiscent of Conor Aldo, where everyone still doubted him and they still had questions about him. They felt like they just fed him to getting the championship opportunities. And I know Conor won the interim belt, but even after he beat Chad Mendes, who was the wrestler, it was like, oh, he was on short notice. And now he's going to be, there's no chance against Jose Aldo. And then he just lamped him in 13 seconds. And then, I mean, that was it. Dude was just off to the races forever at that point. He was already almost there, but he was off to the races forever. This could be This could be that. I'm not saying it will be, but it could be.
I think you're really close. I actually think this is the Chad Mendes of Sean O'Malley beat, like in the same way when Conor beat Chad. Yes, it was, there were circumstances, short notice, but still he got the win over Chad Mendes. He has the belt. Like Conor is now ascending, and then the Aldo was the final boss to superstardom. Floyd Mayweather not included. If he goes out here and beats Merab, I think that is really akin to the Mendes win. And then Umar is the Aldo. If Umar is the beat Umar, and we are full gas just to the moon with him. So I actually really like that comp. I just want to move it one down.
Yeah, it's around that same thing. Like I know people hate the O'Malley Conor comparisons, but a lot of this has to just do with every time Conor won a fight, it was, well, he didn't do this, or he didn't beat this, or he didn't do that. And it's been very similar with Sean O'Malley. Oh, he beat Marlon Vera. So what? Like, that was a tremendous showing against a guy like that. Like, he shut down a pretty, not the best bantamweight in the world, but it's certainly a dangerous one. Just ask.
This is a Bronga fight. It was like Bronga.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm just saying. Maybe it's just like the demographics, and I'm just not in that Sean O'Malley fan demographic.
We're not.
And that's I guess I can only speak for myself. Like I just love the idea of a guy like Merab winning this, from Georgia and his story, and just even just kind of I kind of compared it to a little bit to Triple G when Triple G kind of became a star, in the sense that it's just kind of like it's kind of broken English. It kind of just works great. Him embracing the Mexican culture, and I don't know. I still think if Merab wins big, then we could have this kind of giant star that we kind of didn't really see coming. So I don't know.
It depends how he does it. I mean, if he finishes Sean, sure. But if we get a Merabbing, unless he like talks shit to some celebrities in the front row like he did with the Cejudo fight, I don't know how much he gains from that. Like if he wins like 49-46, he just keeps getting takedowns. And he just lays on O'Malley, and O'Malley can't get up. And when O'Malley gets up, he just takes him back down again.
He blows him.
Even impressive for us.
Well, what if he Peter Yans him the way he beat Peter Yan?
That would be something. That
was
really
impressive. I just don't think he's
really
going to get over broadly.
Yeah, okay. My one concern is that Merab's Sean, and then when he wins the belt, he's getting booed because it wasn't like the most thrilling fight. What are you talking? Like that happens all the time. It happens all the time.
That's a Bellator thing.
Yeah,
I mean, so it is super a Bellator thing.
But at the same time, like, because I agree with you. Like the O'Malley fan base is different, right? But this is the audience the UFC is 1,000% promoting towards. They're not promoting to us. They don't give a shit about us. Care about
they have
that
us.
cluster. Yeah, they got us forever, and they know it.
I am curious though about how the crowd reaction will be, because those are not regular fans in that crowd.
I think it will be extremely poor if Merab's him.
Yeah, that fan base, because I don't think. Yeah,
I do not believe the fan base that will be paying the money that it costs to go to the Sphere has any interest in a Merabbing. And again, that's not to say it won't be impressive as hell. He'll move up our pound for pound, all of that. I will be very, very surprised if Merab wins and comes out a massive star. Like I don't see the path for him to get a W and captivate the masses' imagination. Even though it should, like, it'd be a great win. I just don't think that's going to work for him. Could always be wrong. We'll see.
We'll see.
I'm shocked Merab has gotten as over as he has. Like, honestly, he's done a fantastic job of getting to where he is.
And that's what I mean. His popularity has, I think, continually surprised us, and that's why I think if he succeeds tomorrow, that popularity will that same energy will continue.
It's possible.
So that's all.
Maybe
it is absolutely. I mean, it is possible. We'll just I can't see it, but I hope I'm wrong, because that would be cool for a guy like Merab to be popular.
Yeah. All right. Thank you, Joey Miller.
Thanks, Joey.
Two more super chats.
Riyadh season. Mas Bing Rips, por favor. LFG, Mexican flag, some other emojis in there. Lazy bed. Mas Bing Rips. None for me, thank you, but please enjoy your Bing Rips. And one more sleep, guys. We're almost there. Dave, love you guys. Thank you for all you do. Shout out Boston Mike. I'm from Abington. Grew up with Manny Bermudez. Jed, your dirtbag. Casey, the stash is on point. Well, that was two very nice things, and then you addressing me. So thanks, Dave.
I see no lies.
I mean, that's
no lies. No lies.
He didn't even have to say.
What the hell happened?
He didn't even have to say he was a Boston guy. If he left out "I'm from Abington," I would have guessed he was from the Boston area somewhere, just based on the compliment and then just kind of the compliment sandwich. That's a true Boston thing. Jed,
Mike,
you're a
you're doing the
dirtbag, but
best.
Casey, love the stash, dude.
Mike, love you, Jed. Eat dirt. Casey, great stash. Thanks, guys. Terrific.
Yep, Abington for life. Let's go.
I like this guy, Dave.
That was well executed, Dave. I gotta give you your props there. But, damn. Hit by a drive-by. Damn. Jonah Friedman. I saw this question. Thanks, Casey, because I want to get y'all's opinions on it. Are both winners of the title fights just keeping belts warm for Umar, obviously, and Manon? So Manon Fiorot has weighed in as the backup fighter for the co-main event tomorrow. All certainly not locked in stone, though Dana has previously said if you weigh in as a backup fighter, you get the next title fight. I'm sorry, Matoush Gamrot, you were screwed here, but ostensibly Manon gets to fight the winner of the co-main tomorrow, and very, very far from being set in stone, but Umar Nurmagomedov does appear at least to have the inside track to challenge the winner of the main event tomorrow. So good question. Mike, are the winners tomorrow evening just placeholders for the next fights and potential future champions?
Not necessarily. It depends. Like, I think Sean O'Malley and Umar is really fascinating. I think it's a really interesting fight, especially after watching the Corey Sandhagen fight. And I was incredibly impressed with Umar in that fight. That was the one where I was like, all right, this guy, he ain't just like a top 10 guy. He's not a flash in the pan. Like, he's the real deal. Stylistically, Sean O'Malley and him is, boy, I can't think of a more fascinating fight under lightweight than that one, honestly. Like, this one's with Merab is really close, but him and Umar is another thing. At the same token, if Sean gets that rub, if he has that Mendez Aldo moment, his options are aplenty, man. And I know he's kind of talked back a little bit of the moving up to 45 thing, but I got to tell you, I think he's going to call Ilia Toporia's name tomorrow night. I kind of have no doubt in my mind that he's going to call Ilia Toporia's name tomorrow night. Even before the Max Holloway fight, I think he's going to call out the winner of that fight. What does that do for Umar? Does that mean, because Sean just did that. Like, he beat Marlon and then he called out Topuria. He's still going to fight Merab. He went to the post-fight press conference and said, look, they want me to fight Merab. Like, I'll go fight that dude. Like, I'm fine with it. This is just what I see and what I want right now. So I can, as long as he doesn't call for a freaking boxing match with Ryan Garcia or Gervonta Davis, then we're cool here. So I don't know if that fight happens. The Manon one's tough, man, because she's a tough fight for either of those women, but I don't know if I would be confident picking her against Grasso or Shevchenko, but it wouldn't shock me if she did, so I'll say no. That'll be my answer.
I'll say yes, honestly, on both. And I'm fascinated. Yeah, I'm fascinated in the Umar fight with Sean O'Malley. I think that if this isn't true, it's because Sean O'Malley is very savvy and gets on the mic tomorrow and says, Davison Figueiredo, I want to fight you next. I think he should strongly do that, because Davison Figueiredo has a legitimate case to get a title fight, and that would be better for Sean O'Malley than fighting Umar at this point in time. And so, if Umar isn't next, then that's because Sean has managed this well. Which could happen, but I do think it's most likely going to be Umar. For Manon, I would probably favor, if Valentino beats Grasso, I'd favor her to beat Manon, but I'm not entirely sure Valentino wins tomorrow and then even returns to flyweight. I think there's a very real chance this is her final flyweight fight, win or lose, and bantamweight is in her future. And even so, Manon Fiorot has overachieved beyond my expectations for her repeatedly. She is a absolute hoss, very, very well-rounded skill set. I think she can just kind of out physical either woman. And I wouldn't feel like massively confident, but the tides seem to be changing in the weight class. So I wouldn't feel that bad about predicting this early and then riding it.
All right. Would Umar right now, if regardless of the winner of tomorrow, would he be the favorite over O'Malley?
I believe
uh,
Umar would
Merab?
be the favorite over anyone at bantamweight. If O'Malley just dummies Merab tomorrow, or vice versa, maybe it's close. But I think like
Closer,
right
but
now, like before these two fight, Umar I think is a clear favorite over either betting wise. Tomorrow could change that if one dude just runs the other out of the cage. Maybe that changes. I still think Umar is the favorite though.
yeah, and I think Manon would be like a plus like 190, 200 maybe.
I think she would be really, really close with Grasso, maybe just a stone pick'em, unless Grasso
Really?
like stuns us tomorrow, like looks unbelievable. I think she'd be extremely close with Grasso and a slight underdog to Shevchenko. I mean, Manon has just been very, very good. So she doesn't dazzle you, but she's been
Yeah.
incredibly effective. So
All right.
yeah. But like Umar was like a minus 500 favorite over Corey freaking Sandhagen before he'd fought anyone remotely as good as Corey Sandhagen. I think he's just the betting favorite over anyone in the weight class right now.
For sure. We got just two more. One more super chat though, from Chase again.
More Mexicans at 306 or Canelo? I'm assuming you mean in attendance because otherwise this question doesn't make sense.
By a lot.
The Sphere
Canelo by
does
like
not
5,000.
the Sphere does not seat as many people as the T-Mobile Arena.
Yeah.
Even if they were in comparable arenas, I would still believe that it is Canelo.
Yeah, I think for the Mexican fan base, both Mexican American and Mexicans from Mexico, I still think Canelo is the fight this weekend. No matter UFC is just dipping their toe into this Noche UFC thing, so it's just not a thing yet. Yeah, like I see
Canelo has
Canelo.
owned this weekend for over a decade.
Yeah, yeah. So watching and in attendance, yes, there'll be more Mexicans with Canelo tomorrow night, no matter what happens in the big old Spear. And
let's get one more in here, Case, and then we can call it a night.
Chris Joyce. Well, you paid some money for this. I'm not sure what you're asking.
For your Bing watch along tomorrow,
Let's go.
Yeah, I mean, we are doing the watch along tomorrow. Watch party.
Sure.
At 9:30, roughly 9:45, whatever the start time is. Same as always. I mean, it won't be quite the same. Connor's no longer here. I'm taking over. It's going to be fun. We've got some ideas. Mostly we get to enjoy whatever the hell this is going to be with all of you tomorrow. So yeah, join in. We're going to have a great time.
All right. And our
last games. There's going to be some shame in the fallout of this as well for either Jed or myself. More on that tomorrow.
Shame.
And our last question from our great friend, Scott McCrate.
Scott McCrate, you guys think this breaks 750,000 pay-per-view buys? I want to lead us off here because I'm going to be optimistic and say that it does. That is not based on a lot of belief and kind of what we've heard behind the scenes about O'Malley's popularity as a pay-per-view draw. Not nearly as established as he would want you to believe at this time. But I mentioned this earlier this week. I have been getting the questions. This is past the mom test. People in my family are reaching out about the card at Sphere because the Sphere has become such a cultural touchstone, such a interesting thing that has broken through the kind of normal MMA fog to the other side of things. And so given how this has been promoted, sort of the once in a lifetime, aspect to it, I'm going to optimistically say, that this, maybe doesn't get to 1 million, but that we're talking about one of the more successful non-Conor McGregor pay-per-views that the UFC can put together.
No, it'll be close though, which will still be a success. Like I think without the Sphere, this probably does 425 ish.
I mean, you had
But with
420
it
right there available to you for the Sean.
Yeah, but I mean, for the Bings, the Bing number 420 Bing. But I think with the Sphere, I actually think it bumps it up a bunch. I'll say like 600,000, which for
still be
in
very
2024 is a great number. That's a spectacular number. And if the UFC and ESPN Plus deliver 600,000 pay-per-view buys, they're going Sizzler after UFC.
We going Sizzler.
Yeah.
Thank you for understanding the white men can't jump reference.
Yeah. I'm going under, and I think it's going to be under 500. I just don't think people they need to see it. They need to see what a production in the Sphere looks like. Ticket sales are different. Buying what you're expecting on TV is something totally different. So I think Canelo will do. Do you think Canelo does better pay-per-view wise?
Yes.
No.
100%.
You think it does?
I think 100%.
Even at $90?
It's Canelo.
Yeah. And I think that takes I don't know what chunk that takes away from this,
not
UFC
a ton.
Noche. But I mean, they're selling it on the whole Mexican independence.
I think it takes some away, but it probably didn't take like that much. They're just not that major of a crossover.
The ones that would take away though are going to buy both. They're just going to buy both.
I actually may be incorrect as well, because I just pulled it up because I was like, this is still Canelo, and
he's
the
not a
Merab
huge
fight
pay-per-view guy. Yeah.
I mean, he's still doing extremely well, but the Merab fight only sold 560.
Yeah.
So it's not, he's not a guaranteed mil, but I thought he was guaranteed 750.
No.
As opposed to this being an ambitious 750. So
it's going to be close.
Be a dead heat.
I've been to a lot of Canelo events, and it's just like the fever, the media buzz for it. It feels like a Conor fight every time. But
that doesn't always translate, because Canelo's not fighting the guys that boxing enthusiasts want to see him fight. He's fighting Berlanga.
John Jones. Canelo is. I'm not even in the ducking.
Nobody wants this fight. They'll watch it because they like Canelo, but nobody wants this fight. Not one person asked for it.
Yeah,
but I'm just saying, like, it's Canelo. Doesn't matter. It's Canelo.
It is, but like, we have math. Like, I'm just looking at numbers. Like, Canelo is not going to sell more than 700,000 buys tomorrow.
No.
The Charlo fight did that. Like.
No. I don't think it will. I didn't say it was going to 750. I just think it will outsell the UFC.
Well, I mean, that depends on your UFC, on what you think this UFC is going to do. You think it's to do 460, then yeah. I think the UFC will outsell it, because Canelo's going to sell 500 tomorrow based on it.
Yeah.
I didn't realize that he was like, I in my head, Canelo is $1 million pay-per-view or $1 million pay-per-view guy, and he's not. He's John Jones, or if he has an opponent, he's $1 million pay-per-view buy. If he doesn't, he's 500K, which is still an unbelievable number. That's still making $50 million, not including the gate and shit. Unreal numbers to do.
Yeah.
Casey, let's wrap it up then. If we don't have any more super chats, we've been here for 90 minutes. It's more than enough time. Guys, you know the deal. One more sleep. We still have a ton of coverage coming your way. There is a pre-fight Q&A tomorrow. Mike and Casey are on that. We got a watch party tomorrow. We have all the coverage, and we have still the ceremonial weigh-ins to come for Noche UFC. We'll have coverage of the Canelo fight as well as Misfits and Bellator tomorrow. All that at MMAfighter.com. Make sure you go there. Thanks for sticking with us. Thanks for listening in if you're coming in after the fact. Thank you, Mike Heck, for letting me take the reins and you putting on the pundit cap. Thank you, Casey, for never wearing sleeves, because look at those guns, just putting on a show for the folks at home and putting on this show physically. Thank all you for tuning in. See you tomorrow for the post show. Love y'all.
Bye-bye.